Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm in this 2007 Mercedes S-Class that I paid just £3,500 for. This is Mercedes' flagship car, driven by the world's most successful and influential people, and I picked it up for the same price as an 8-year-old Ford Focus. If you're a broke managing director of a company who's regularly woken up in the morning by a text from the bank to alert them that they're very close to their overdraft limit, then this might be the perfect car for you. Don't worry if that is you, because most days it's me. I don't even need to set an alarm anymore because good old NatWest are there to the rescue. So this is a 2007 56 reg Mercedes S320. It's not like it's an old scruffy example either for £3,500, it's actually in very good condition. It's only done 110,000 miles, the service history is full Mercedes or Mercedes Specialist. It's only had 3 owners too. I've always liked the Mercedes S-Class. It's a big show-off barge, it's a big executive limo. I mean, what's not to like? You sit here in this lovely cabin, everything is nice and soft to touch. The leather is thick and plush. You look out over the big imposing bonnet and look at the bonnet ornament. It just makes you feel successful, even if you're not. This car uses a 3-litre V6 turbo diesel, which produces about 230 horsepower. It's the same 3-litre V6 diesel that's featured in all manner of things, from Jeeps to Chryslers, even the Maserati Ghibli in the UK comes with a 3-litre V6 diesel. It's the same unit. I personally prefer the old Mercedes 6-cylinder diesel that was a straight 6. They were as tough as old boots. I don't personally think that these V6 diesels are all that reliable. I'm sure though this is the part where a lot of you will chirp up and say, oh, I had a Jeep Grand Cherokee and I did 3 million miles in it. Anyway, if that's the case then fine, but in my experience they're not the most reliable of engines. My favourite Mercedes model is probably the S500 because it just makes no sense. It's silly. I mean, think of it like this. You've got the Mercedes S320 diesel that's very efficient, and then at the other end of the scale you've got the S63 that's very fast. So the S500 is neither of those things, it just sits in the middle and it's a little bit pointless, and that's why I like it. The S500's only talent is making it look like you've got some wealth. I think there's nothing more old money than an S500, and a big executive car should give off that message. I bought this car based on a loose description of it without seeing it first, and the condition's alright, so I've got no issues there. But I thought because this was Mercedes' flagship car that it would have every conceivable extra. I thought there'd be a full glass roof. I thought the seats would massage you while you drive along. I thought they'd be heated and cooled. I thought it would have the night vision camera. I thought there'd be a fridge and a microwave in the back. And none of that is true, by the way. What I've done accidentally is bought the most basic Mercedes S-Class known to man. It has got nothing on it. It's funny, with a high-end car, the more time you spend with it, the more you realise or the more you find optional extras that you didn't know it had. With this, it's the opposite. Every time I drive this, I'm reminded of what it doesn't have. Let me just quickly run you through some of the things it doesn't have. I've got electric seats, but they're not heated, they're not ventilated, they're not massaging. I've got no sunroof. I've got no night vision camera. I've got no radar cruise control. I've even, and I couldn't believe this was possible, I've even got no parking sensors. None on the front and none on the rear. I only discovered that the other day when I was trying to back this onto my driveway and nearly took out my garage door. It doesn't have parking sensors. Back in 2007, somebody spent £58,000 on this car, and they got an S-Class Mercedes with no parking sensors. God knows who the first owner was. I think it might have been Bob Cratchit. Can you imagine the first owner of this car? Yes, alright, I'll spend £60,000 on a new S-Class Mercedes, but I don't want any newfangled technology on it. It's just more to go wrong, isn't it? I just can't imagine the person that would do that. I bet they've got a black and white television. I just want to say a big thank you to today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Car Vertical. Now, before you hand over any cash for a used car or motorbike, it's really important that you do a thorough vehicle history check. Otherwise, you just don't know what you're buying. A car might look okay on the face of it, but until you do a thorough vehicle history check, you really don't know what's lurking beneath. I've been using Car Vertical now for years, and every single car you can see on the forecourt, I've checked using Car Vertical. All you do is head over to carvertical.com and type in the reg or the VIN, and then it produces a very detailed report. So it tells you whether it's ever been stolen, written off, had a mileage rollback, or has outstanding finance on it. In addition to that, it shows you the MOT history, the ownership changes, the spec of the car, the average market value, and a whole lot more. It doesn't just work in the UK either, it works in 35 different countries. So before you complete your purchase of your car or motorcycle, make sure you do a thorough vehicle history check first using Car Vertical. If you use my promo code HIGHPEAK, that's HIGHPEAK all one word, HIGHPEAK, you'll save yourself 20% off each and every check that you do. Or alternatively, click the link below in the video description. Right, enough of that. I don't know who I'm more cross with, Mercedes for being very mean with their optional extras, or the first owner for being a cheapskate. To drive, well, in fact, should we take it on a little drive? I know we're on lockdown in the UK, but we'll just take it for a little drive, because we're not supposed to leave the house. There we go. But no, seriously, to drive, there's no polite way of saying this, but it's a bit of a barge. It's floaty and imprecise. But you might think that's a negative thing, but on the flip side, the ride is perfect. It's one of the most comfortable cars I've ever driven. The seats are very soft and thick and wide, and it has this air ride suspension. You can actually raise it here with this button on the dashboard, but it just irons out any bumps in the road. It is so smooth to drive. So it's not the most engaging car to drive, granted, but it does still make you feel quite special. The interior is lovely. I've got loads of space around me, and this is just the standard wheelbase model, it's not the L. The interior is really well finished, and I love some of the attention to detail. I love the analog clock, although I can't get it to display the right time. I like that you can tilt the sat-nav screen here by pressing this button to make it more focused on the driver. I like the volume control here, so you can increase or decrease the volume. I like some of the little storage compartments you get too. Bear in mind this car's now 13 years old, everything's really well finished, and nothing's broken. Having said that, I'm jumping the gun there a little bit because there are a few things broken. The driver's window doesn't work, doesn't go up or down, it's just completely dead. And also it's got a minor oil leak. I use the word minor in the same sense that the Exxon Valdez had a minor oil leak. I'm not sure where it's coming from, but I'll have to get that investigated. The boot is massive, and I like the fact that you can pop the boot lid open from the key. That actually has soft close unlike the rest of the doors. I also like the digital dash display, everything's really clear. But no, everything just feels really, really high quality. I also love the styling, it's quite imposing and impressive. I don't think it's pretty like a Jaguar XJ, but it's somehow muscular and brawny. It's quite a brutalist design. You know when you see a building designed by Sir Christopher Wren and you're in awe of it because it's beautiful? Well, that would be the Jaguar XJ. On the other hand, you know when you're in Berlin and you see some big, imposing, brutalist building? It's not pretty, but you're still in awe of it. Well, that would be the Mercedes S-Class. I also like how everybody knows what it is, even if you're not a car guy. If you don't know your Audis from your Alphas, you still know that this is an S-Class Mercedes, and I like that. It's instantly recognisable. Also, the alloys are corroded, and 3 or 4 of the tyres are close to the legal limit, so what I might do, rather than just replace the tyres, is find a new set of alloys, some bigger AMG style wheels, and put those on. I think that would look much better. I can already see this car's turning into a little bit of a project car, so let me know below if you've got any ideas for it, because I'm not sure what to do with it. Again, I think this is going to turn into one of those series of videos of what not to do rather than, you know, helpful advice. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm back in my old cheap Soviet spec S-Class Mercedes, which is finally fixed and ready to go. Basically, a few months ago I bought what I thought at the time was a very cheap old S-Class Mercedes. I paid just £3,500 for this car. But it turned out to be quite a basic model, and it also had a number of problems. I quickly realised that it wasn't the bargain I thought it was. My emotions and feelings towards this car have been up and down from the very beginning. At first I liked it because I thought it was a cheap Mercedes. Then for a period I hated it because it was just bill after bill after bill. And then now it's all sorted, I've really grown attached to it. So yeah, a bit of a roller coaster of emotions. There's something about an S-Class Mercedes. There's just a touch of class to it that you don't find in many other cars. It makes you feel important. I know you'll probably snigger at that because most passers-by will just see this as an old 14-year-old car that's not worth an awful lot of money. But I'm talking about the actual driving experience. Every time you get behind the wheel, it makes you feel important and special. It's so refined and quiet and smooth. It really makes you feel completely disconnected from the outside world, which, as an introvert, is quite a nice feeling. And the ride quality is just unrivaled. It's so comfortable. Obviously you've got air suspension, I've got the smaller wheels, which again improves the ride quality, and the seats are so padded and comfortable. I would drive anywhere now with this car. In fact, it's a perfect road trip car. You could do hundreds of miles a day in this thing and just not feel exhausted or tired or fatigued. The steering's nice and light, the turning circle's very good. There's just something quite imperious about the S-Class driving experience, and that's kind of addictive in itself. The 3-litre V6 turbo diesel engine under the bonnet is a perfect match for this car as well because it's much more economical than the petrol models, so with a full tank of fuel you'll do 600 miles before you need to refill. It really would be capable of crossing continents this without you having to stop many times. It's so torquey, this car. I don't know the exact torque figure off the top of my head, so maybe I'll add that in afterwards. It's really quite a good match for this car. You put your foot down, there's a little bit of turbo lag to be fair, but then all of a sudden it pins you into your seat and just keeps pulling and pulling and pulling. Anyway, on to the issues that this car had, which have now been resolved. There was an oil leak, the driver's window didn't work. What else? All the tyres were bald. There was just quite a bit of general maintenance that it needed that had been neglected. And also occasionally when you tried to start it, the very first attempt, it would start and then cut out immediately, so you'd have to start it again. So they were the main issues I had to deal with. To fix the driver's window, I stripped the door down, and usually I thought it's got to be a driver's window regulator or a window switch. Anyway, it wasn't the regulator, that was fine. So I ordered a new switch, or a used switch from a Mercedes breaker. That didn't work either. In the end, I took it to a place called SPR, who are a Mercedes specialist in Stockport, and they got to the problem straight away. Now, it turned out to be a software update, which cost about £100, but have you ever heard of anything so overly complicated? A software update sorted the window. So now it all works. So that was quite a simple fix in the end. Had I taken it there directly and not faffed around with the regulator or the switch, it would have saved me some money. I also needed to get a new headlamp switch because there was an issue with the lights. So I got the window switch and the headlamp switch from a company called Dronsfield, who are Mercedes breakers, who initially were very helpful and happy to help. And I thought, oh, this is good, the fact that I've just discovered this new Mercedes breaker, I'll use those in the future. Anyway, when I called them to say they'd sent me the wrong headlamp switch and I needed a refund on the window switch because it didn't cure it, the guy got very stroppy and quite difficult to deal with. And as yet, I still haven't received a refund. I called them twice last week, they still wouldn't give me a refund because they claimed they hadn't received the parts, which isn't true because I posted them first class about 6 weeks ago. Also, while it was at SPR, they attended to a few other issues as well. So the misfire, it turned out to have a misfire on cylinder 3. So they checked the injector and there was nothing actually wrong with the injector. So they put some injector cleaner fluid through it and advised me to do some miles in it using premium diesel. And they also said, which is something that I've always insisted for years and they've just confirmed it, they also said don't let the tank run low and try and use premium fuel because it will help the injectors. So that's exactly what I've done, hence me doing like 500 miles in this thing. It also had a throttle body, which they coded into the car, and the DPF had exceeded its limit, so they had to reset that and do a forced regeneration of that. And since then it's been fine. So now if you put your foot down, there's no misfire whatsoever, and it's got all the power in the world. This is a beast, this thing, you know. Quite impressed with that. So all that work at SPR, including the £100 for the window, cost me £208 in total, which I didn't think was too bad. But at that point, I'd already spent quite a lot of money on this car. The next job to sort out was the oil leak. Now, quite a lot of you guessed correctly that it was the oil cooler that was leaking. It turns out to be quite a common issue on this 3-litre diesel engine. Now, the actual part wasn't too expensive, but there were lots of hours labour because it's buried within the V of the engine. So, yeah, that cost me quite a few £100s to sort that out, but now it doesn't leak any oil. On top of those main faults, it also needed a full service, so I've had a full oil filter, pollen, air, fuel filter, I've had all those replaced. It needed 4 tyres, which I've replaced with brand new ones. I was thinking of going for a new set of wheels, a bigger set, but some of you said that would ruin the ride, so I took your advice there and stuck with these original wheels, which I've had refurbished because they were quite curbed and the lacquer was starting to peel. So I've had the wheels refurbished and I've had 4 new tyres. They're not the best brand, to be honest. In fact, I'd never even heard of them, but they're brand new, so they'll do for a few thousand miles. It also needed new brake discs and pads front and rear, so it's had those replaced. So now it stops on a 6pence. The next job, I had the auto gearbox serviced. Now, my mechanic said when he drained the fluid out of the gearbox, it was black, so it must have been the original 13 or 14-year-old oil. So that was quite a wise decision to have that done. It'll just prolong its life. And it's not an expensive job to do, so I always recommend getting that done. If you've got an automatic gearbox, by the time it gets to 80 or 90,000 miles, you really want to get the fluid changed. After that, I got Paul from UK Pro Tints to come round and tint the rear windows. I just went with like a medium grade tint, so it looked like genuine Mercedes privacy. I didn't want anything too, East End, low ranking drug dealer spec. I just wanted it to look a little bit more modern and classy, which I think it's done. It's sort of transformed it. Looks much sportier. Then I had a full detailed valet. I had the car buffed and waxed and all that stuff. So I think it looks really good for a 14-year-old car. It's quite a good transformation So I've discovered after all of this, something that I think I already knew already. There's no such thing as a cheap Mercedes. You're probably wondering by now what I've spent on this car, so let me just pull over and do the calculations for you. So the new budget tyres cost me £269.40. I told you they were cheap tyres. The oil cooler job, the total job all done and fitted, was £434.64. The full engine service and the brakes, and also I forgot to mention this, it needed a new battery because there were loads of, when my mechanic plugged in the code reader, there were loads of faults with the car, and a battery cured that. But being an S-Class Mercedes and they're massively over-engineered, it took 2 batteries. So there's one in the boot and there's one up front. So yeah, 2 batteries, a full engine service, and brake discs and pads cost me £1,008.14. The window tints cost me £110. Then you've got the valet, buff, wheel refurbs, that cost me £180. Then the billet SPR, that was £208. The parts at Dronsfield were £100, which I'm yet to get back, so hopefully that'll be knocked off. My gearbox service cost £144, so the total comes to £2,454.18, which is more than I thought. This all feels a little bit familiar. If I sold this for the asking price, which is unlikely, but bear with me, let's try and keep the glass half full, not half empty, I would make a total profit of £45, which is smashing business, isn't it? It's like an episode of Wheelie Dealers, this, isn't it? Core Ed, I've made a few quid out of this one, son. Made like £200. Well, Mike, that's not strictly true, is it? Because I've spent the last 3 weeks grafting my balls off on it. Anyway, that's just how it goes in this job sometimes. But still, when you think about how much car you get for the money, right, this owes me the best part of £6,000 now. It's still an awful lot of car for the money. And I've now got a nice looking, nice driving, well kept and well maintained S-Class Mercedes that's done 111,000 miles. And it does make me feel good, the fact that I've kept this car on the road and it will still be around in many years to come. What really winds me up is, why didn't the previous owner do this? They've just neglected this beautiful car and let it rot. It's not right, is it? That's sort of what I enjoy about doing these kind of projects, to be honest. I know there's no money in it, so it's all a bit pointless, really. But I do get some sort of weird satisfaction knowing that I've saved and looked after a car. And this was definitely worthy of that. I mean, for example, had I not bought it at £3,500, somebody else would have bought it at £3,500, not spent a penny on it, and in 6 months' time or a year's time, something bad would have happened, the gearbox would have gone or the turbo would have blown, and it would have just been written off and crushed. It seems like such a waste. I feel like nowadays we're always told we should be recycling more and watching our consumption, and yet too many people will just crush a perfectly acceptable, perfectly good car rather than spend some money on it. It's madness. One thing I've forgotten to mention, here in the UK, car dealers have to pay VAT on their gross profit, which means it's currently set at 20%. So my gross profit on this car, the difference between the sale price of hopefully £6,000 and what I bought it for at 3.5, my gross profit is £2,500. So I've got to pay VAT on 20% of £3,500. There goes my £45 profit, doesn't it? I always think it's quite unfair that car dealers have to pay the VAT, because we're one of the few industries in the UK that we just have to suffer it. We have to pay VAT, but we're not allowed to charge it. So for example, if I buy a car for £1,000 and sell it for £2,000, I have to pay 20% of that £1,000 profit, which is fine, I suppose. But if I buy a car for £1,000, spend £1,000 on it, and still only sell it for £2,000, I still have to pay 20% of that gross £1,000 margin, which I just don't think is right. But anyway, there's not much I can do about that. Let me work that out then. If I have to pay 20% of £2,500, that's the actual 20% of that is £415. If I put that against my £45 profit, yeah, there we go. I would make a loss on this car at the asking price of £370. Not very good at this job, am I? Anyway, I'm quite happy with the outcome, so I'll just have to forget about that, I suppose, but hopefully it'll serve as a lesson to you all, really. There is no such thing as a cheap Mercedes. But to be honest with you, you never really want to buy the cheapest of anything. I see this happen all the time. People just are obsessed with the price. Nobody cares about value, they care about price. And they're two different things. You shouldn't really go after the cheapest thing. You want the best value, not the lowest price. And quite often, once you've found something that's the lowest price, it will cost you big time in the pocket. Alright guys, how's it going? Welcome back. Today I'm back in my old S-Class Mercedes. I'll be honest, I wasn't planning to drag the story of this car out for 3 episodes. I thought I'd summed it up in just 2. Part 1 gave you some background about the car and all of its flaws, and then in part 2 I went through all of my bills, some of which were eye-wateringly expensive. I think I summed it up by declaring that nobody should ever buy a cheap Mercedes under any circumstances, because there's no such thing. If you think it's cheap in the first instance, you'll end up spending twice that again just repairing it. So that was that, end of story. Or so I thought. Instead, it got creative and found a new way of extracting a 4-figure sum out of my wallet. I mentioned in the last video that it had this weird fault. It was only an intermittent thing, it didn't do it all the time, but you would start the car and then it would immediately die, so then you'd have to start it again and it would be fine. Now it did this initially, probably once every half a dozen times. So it was put down to a misfire on injector 3 and it had something to do with running the fuel tank low, so that didn't help. So after all the money I spent on it, I thought I'd cured that because although it still did it, it would maybe do it once every 20 starts or something, so I thought that was that. I thought I could live with that on such an old car. However, it didn't mend itself, it got more and more frequent, and also in addition to that, it developed a rattle on startup. So every time you started it from cold, you would get 3 or 4 seconds of metallic rattle coming from the engine bay. For many years, I always thought the timing chain was superior to a timing belt. I always thought after over a century of making the automobile, why would some manufacturers insist on using a glorified elastic band to control the engine's timing, rather than a metallic chain that would last the car's lifetime? You know, these rubber timing belts perish with age and need to be changed regularly. Absurdly regularly if you drive an Alfa. But I'm slowly changing my mind. You see, with a rubber timing belt, the cost of replacing that is usually around £300. And then then it's good for 5 years, 6 years, 8 years, whatever the interval is. And once that job's done, you know where you stand. Whereas with a timing chain, they're not designed to be replaced, so it's always a massive job to replace them. In the case of most Audis, it's an engine out job because they position the chain right at the back of the engine. So unless you're a field mouse or a snake, you just can't get in there. So I took the car back to SPR Stockport, who rightly suggested that we replace the timing chain at a cost of £850, which I did, and now the car is perfect. It's never, not once faulted, and of course the rattle on startup's gone. But yeah, another £850. So hopefully now, with its new timing chain and tensioners, this will keep the S-Class on the road for at least another decade. It just means that my file of receipts for this car is getting almost as heavy as the S-Class itself. When I picked up the car from SPR, I was chatting with them, and he told me this was the 3rd S-Class Mercedes timing chain he's replaced this year. Now, I'd never heard of that as being a common issue, but apparently it is. What's strange though is that Mercedes use this engine in a whole host of cars, and I've never heard of a timing chain being an issue, but apparently with the S-Class it can be. So if you are in the market for one, just bear that in mind, because it's almost a 4-figure sum to repair. I think at the end of the last video I'd worked out that I'd spent about £2,500 repairing this car. So now I can add another £850 on top of that, which brings my total up to almost £3,500, which, if you remember, was the price I paid for the car in the first place. So now my very cheap Mercedes S-Class has now cost me the exact same again to repair it, which is just like my old M3. I've now spent 100% of the purchase price repairing it. But hey ho, c'est la vie, such is life, whatever other idiotic sayings people have. So there we are. At the end of the last video, I suggested you never buy a cheap Mercedes-Benz, and now of course I've got even more evidence for that.